Good evening, dear listener. Where are you listening from tonight? Perhaps you're curled beneath a soft blanket as the sky dims beyond your window. Maybe it's morning somewhere far away and you're slipping gently into sleep after a long turning night. Whatever time it is, wherever you are, welcome. You've come to the right place. To settle, to rest, to drift into history's quieter corners. If you find peace here, if the stillness carries you, I invite you to subscribe and share your journey below. Let us know where you are, or simply that you're listening. Now close your eyes if you wish. Let the weight of the day dissolve. Marble columns rise around you, towering yet softened by moonlight. The city sleeps, but Rome never truly rests. Even in dreams, its empire pulses beneath your feet. You follow the curve of an old aqueduct, its stones still strong after centuries. In Rome, memory could be reshaped as easily as clay. Not melody, more like a suggestion, a memory of music. Rome was a builder of wonders, but also of consequences. Law, they said, was eternal, but punishment, that was personal. Citizens would gather not for entertainment, but enforcement. Laws were posted in bronze, carved into stone, legible, permanent. To break them meant more than a penalty. It meant performance. Where cruelty can be cloaked in order, and the law's weight can fall without sound. You stand at the edge of the forum, not in daylight, but in the quiet cradle of night. Lanterns flicker distantly like thoughts not fully formed. Not through Rome's wars or roads or rulers, but through its consequences. Let the wind carry you deeper into the empire's forgotten edges. Through the strange, symbolic, and sometimes surreal ways, it taught obedience. From gladiator arenas to temple steps, justice was rarely private. But before the punishments grew loud, there was always a quiet moment before judgment fell. A breath held, a name called, and as your breath softens, your mind opens. Rome welcomes you, not with triumph, but with curiosity, not with glory, but with its shadows. The light changes. The modern world grows quiet. A hush settles around you like falling ash. A faint breath of incense lingers in the air, old and sweet. The cobbled streets echoed nothing now. No chariots, no sandals, no judgment being called. You walk slowly, past a crumbling arch, your hand grazing the flaked relief of a Roman eagle. The stone is cool, almost wet with dew, and your fingers tingle as if touching memory itself. The flame stutters gently, reminding you that even fire, like empire, flickers. Do you feel the weight of all that was decided here? Do you wonder how many stood in this spot, waiting for justice, or punishment? And yet the stones seem to remember. They hold things in silence. A forum is a place of voice, but tonight only history speaks. Somewhere beyond the hills, the Tiber whispers to itself, carrying memories downriver. Beneath this great hush, the ghosts of decisions linger. Commands etched in granite, edicts once shouted from balconies, oaths spoken under breath. Here, in this timeless stillness, you do not simply visit the past, you sink into it. A single torch burns at the end of the colonnade, casting light and rhythms, like a heartbeat. A breeze curls around your legs like a whisper in Latin, dry and patient. You pause before a statue worn smooth by weather and time. Perhaps it was once a senator, or a god, or a criminal reimagined. The air shifts again. Somewhere unseen, a lyre plucks a single note and then goes silent. Did you know the Forum once echoed with public readings of crimes? Rome was a stage, and its punishments often had an audience. That's where we are now. At the edge of that breath, what does it mean to live under a system where every action might become theater? Tonight, as sleep begins to claim you, we will follow that thread. You will meet a girl entrusted with flame, a man sewn into a sack with serpents, soldiers who draw lots for death. But not yet. For now, just rest. Let the colonnade stretch beside you, pale in the starlight. Here, even fear sleeps, even cruelty dims. And so, dear listener, we begin, not with a bang, but with a hush. A new silence unfolds. Not the hush of night, but something deeper, ceremonial, reverent, and immovable. The kind of silence that holds its breath beneath the surface. Pale light filters through a mist that clings to columns like faded memory. The scent here is layered. Wood smoke, crushed lavender, and something older still, like parchment that has outlived its story. You are no longer beneath the stars of the Forum. Inside, the air is warm. Fire burns in the center. Not roaring, but steady. A quiet promise in flame. They are the Vestal Virgins, and in this moment, you are one of them. That fire, you realize, has not been extinguished in centuries. Not once. It's the Pontifex Maximus. His presence fills the room like a storm cloud held just above the skin. He does not speak. He does not have to. A meeting. A whisper. A man's hand where none should have been. You know how this ends. You were taught not just the duties of a Vestal, but the price of failure. Bread, water, oil, an oil lamp. To remind you, perhaps, of the flame you failed. You are not killed. You are sealed. You stand now before a round marble temple, small and luminous, nestled like a pearl in the heart of the city, the Temple of Vesta. For 30 years, their lives were not their own. No marriage, no children, no touch, only flame. The crowd parts, not with anger, but awe. Some cover their faces. Others weep. Few whisper prayers, uncertain if they mourn for your fate or fear their own. A hollowed space in the earth, lined with stone, and just tall enough to stand in, receives you like a cold breath. The lamp is placed in your hands. Small pitcher of water. One loaf of bread. These are not mercy. They are compliance. What comfort does ritual provide when it becomes a mechanism for cruelty? Is purity still sacred when enforced by fear? It is morning, though the sun is slow to rise, as if uncertain it wants to witness what will unfold. Her final words, as recorded by historians, were bitterly ironic. Does Caesar think I've had sex with a god then? Because no mortal man touched me. But Rome needed no proof, only precedent. Her tomb was sealed. Or was the accusation a political tool? A way to eliminate a family, silence a lineage, or appease a superstitious public? Its folds are thick, ceremonial, carefully draped, not for comfort but for clarity. How the veil itches lightly at your scalp. It was about control. The body used as metaphor, the womb as state property, the silence as a civic duty. You stir it with a bronze rod, careful not to let it fade. Childhood games in marble courtyards, the soft lilt of a mother's voice, long before the temple walls closed in. Wonder, if you had known, would you have chosen differently? Or was this path always laid out like the flame itself, straight, narrow, and inescapable? It grinds slowly like a thought reconsidered. For to let the fire die would mean something unthinkable, an omen, a dishonor, a statewide panic. A silver band tight across your forehead presses a reminder you are not your own. You step into the temple's threshold. It is the sacred flame of Rome, the heartbeat of the empire, kept alive by a handful of women who never chose this life, but who carry it anyway. You feel the heavy wool of your stola shift against your skin. For a society obsessed with order, the fate of a Vestal was a statement. Rome protects its flame at all costs. The fire cracks softly behind you, echoing in the domed roof like a whisper addressed to the gods. It smells of olive oil and ancient vows. In ancient Rome, the Vestal virgins were chosen before puberty, often at the age of 6 or 7, selected from noble families to serve Vesta, goddess of the hearth. But not all vows remain unbroken. Can not all lives remain pure? Your hands tremble, only slightly, as a shadow enters the temple. Somewhere between last dusk and this dawn, your secret was discovered. Rome does not execute her priestesses. It's not with blood. That would insult the gods. Instead, Rome buries them. A small pit dug just outside the city walls. A punishment devised with legal precision and spiritual theater. How strange, isn't it, that they cannot spill your blood, but they can bury your breath? You are led now not roughly, but ceremoniously, through the streets. You do not resist. Resistance is a fire with no air. The tomb waits, not deep, not hidden. You descend. Your sandals touch earth that no one else will walk upon. Above, the lid begins to close. And then nothing. The flame once sacred in your hands now burns alone above you. How many others have stood in this place, waiting for a god who would not come? One of the most famous cases was that of Cornelia, a Vestal accused of breaking her vows during Emperor Domitian's rule. The ritual was not just punishment, it was performance. Yet scholars continue to debate, were all these women truly guilty? In some ways, you think this punishment was not about purity at all. Inside the tomb, you sit. The lamp flickers beside you. Smells of burning oil and resignation. Your thoughts drift, gently now, not to fear, but to memory. The silence deepens, not oppressive now, but soft, like falling dust. Outside, life continues. The market's open. The city breathes, and the fire in the temple burns on, tended by others. You do not envy them. You only wish them time. It's time to hold the flame without being consumed by it. The river is restless tonight. It breathes against the banks in long, slow sighs, as if it remembers what the city chooses to forget. You stand at the edge of the Tiber now, far from the warmth of temples and the order of civic stone. A wooden pier stretches ahead, slick with dew and silence. For figures wait beside it, bound in iron and myth. A dog trembling, a rooster, silent but alert, a monkey with eyes that dart like flickering fire, and a serpent coiled and dreaming of violence. A ritual not only of death, but of humiliation. You would not die by sword or by flame. You would die by water, by suffocation, by chaos made flesh. The dog is lowered first, still growling low, confused, then the monkey screeching briefly as its limbs vanish into the dark. Inside, the air is thin. A dog's panting fills your ears, close and urgent. The monkey chatters in bursts. Something coils near your leg. You can't tell what. The snake, deceit. The monkey, madness. The rooster, vigilance. Rome didn't just punish, it composed punishments. Death as performance, guilt wrapped in symbolism. Perhaps Rome was saying, to destroy your father is to unmake order itself, to fall not only from grace, but from species. A caste of creatures chosen to mirror the sins of the soul. The rooster follows, flapping once, the sound feathered and frantic. Last, the serpent, careful, deliberate, slid in like a lie. You step carefully, your sandals tapping against the boards. Each step feels older than the last. The monkey's foot claws your chest, then vanishes. You remember your father's hand, once steady, his voice stern but familiar. Was there kindness there, ever? Was the fracture sudden, or did it come slowly, like rot in the foundation? The snake coils upward, confused. The dog howls, once, a sound no one will answer. For a moment there is light, faint blue trembling through the weave, and then none. Just wait. Just movement. The rough hemp itches, digging against skin that no longer resists. There is no more up or down, only dark and breath, if the monkey ever stopped moving. If the dog is curled somewhere, waiting and fading. The water presses inward, like history itself, vast, indifferent, complete. You are led forward with calm ceremony, no shouting, no struggle, only the rhythm of inevitability. Here, the world bends toward punishment. Fog curls along the surface of the water, thin as gauze. Most Roman executions were quick. This one was rare, theatrical. It had to be. Break that order, and you fall. Not only from society, but from species, from form, from light. Because killing a father was not just a crime. It was a crack in the myth of Roman family, of patria potestas, the father's absolute rule over his household. A leather sack lies waiting at the edge, sewn roughly, shaped like absence, and not yet full. You are not here to observe. You are the fifth. The last, ancient Rome, the punishment for parricide, the killing of one's father, was ponacale, the penalty of the sack. Your wrists are already bound. They begin with the animals, and now you. The sack is warm from their bodies. It smells of fur and fear, and the sour breath of anticipation. Above, the opening is stitched shut. The world narrows to fabric and sound. Then, a jolt, the sack is lifted. The river calls. Historians still puzzle over this punishment. Why these animals? Why this particular theater of death? Some say the dog represents loyalty betrayed. Others suggest it was simply about fear. about creating a death so strange, so unsettling, that no one would dare repeat the crime. And yet, was there something deeper, something ritualistic, almost religious, in the way man and beast were tangled in the same sentence? The sack thuds against the ground. You hear voices murmuring outside, soft as prayers. Then gravity. You fall. The impact stuns the breath from you. Cold water rushes in at the seams. Inside, limbs thrash. Fur brushes your cheek. A wing beats your side. Time stretches. A minute becomes something monstrous. You cannot scream. You cannot think. Your heartbeat becomes the only rhythm you understand. And yet even here there is thought, strange clarity. What brings someone to such a crime? What brings a state to answer with this? Some scholars argue that Panicale was not common, only revived at moments of political need or public spectacle. By punishing the crime with chaos, Rome reinforced its ideal. Fathers as pillars, sons as extensions. The sack tumbles now, caught by current. The river swallows it like a secret. You do not resist. You wonder if the snake is still alive. In the end, there is only one truth. No punishment reveals a society. A soul more than the one it reserves for its deepest betrayal. In Rome, ever the dramatist, ever the engineer of meaning, buried its betrayals not in earth, but in myth. You drift now. It's not in water, but in memory. The sack fades from view. The river smooths over. And the world, as always, continues. The wind has changed, carries a different scent now. A metallic whisper, sharp as rusted iron and colder than stone at dawn. You've wandered from the river's edge to a slope just beyond the city's heart, where a small, weed-strewn hill lifts itself into the Roman sky like a forgotten altar. The land here leans toward the sacred and the profane alike. You are standing on a crucifixion ground. This place has no grand architecture, no fountains or marble facades. It offers only wood, rope, and silence. But this is no ordinary cross. It faces downward. The sun does not rise yet, but its early light begins to reach across the land in delicate threads, catching on the raw grain of timber and the bent nails driven deep. The air is still, except for the creak of wood beneath weight. Above you, or rather, below, a man hangs. Muscles strain in unfamiliar directions. Blood moves with gravity's defiance, pooling in the skull, pressing behind the eyes. Breath becomes a riddle, shallow, strained, and never quite enough. But inverted crucifixion, the body hung upside down, was something else entirely. It was not just punishment, it was commentary. Lower, lest they gave him a spectacle. He is Peter, a fisherman from Galilee, a preacher, a follower of a man Rome feared long after his death. But in the tilt of his head, in the way his toes twitch as if grasping for earth, there is something more than pain.
Ow.
There is surrender. His head dangles inches from the earth, his arms bound tight in agony, to intensify the agony, to speed the blood toward the head and choke the breath more quickly, to disorient the body and humiliate the soul. The rebel becomes unmade. The disciple dies in opposition. Inverted, the human form loses its shape, becomes grotesque, unnatural, an echo of itself. This is crucifixion inverted, a punishment reserved for the unruly, the defiant, the unforgettable. The body is slumped but alive. What was meant to humiliate begins to speak another language, the language of devotion. Peter's request may have been submission, but it became defiance. To see the earth above you, close, yet unreachable. To become a monument in reverse, you do not look away. In darker corners of modern myth, it became associated with the profane, if. In the blood-slick ache of inversion, there is revelation. Perhaps it is true that turning the world upside down is sometimes the only way to see it clearly. He ruled not just with decrees, but with dramatics, to absorb what cannot be taught in stone or scroll. Public punishment under his reign was not always about deterrence. It was about display. Under Nero, fire-lit gardens, not torches, but Christians soaked in oil. Executions became evening entertainment. Death was curated like art. In Rome, crucifixion was a common fate for slaves, rebels, and the lowest among the condemned. The scent of old blood, dried sweat, and sun-baked rope curls around the scene like a heavy blanket. You can taste the dust in the back of your throat. It clings like ash, The man hanging here is not unnamed. According to tradition, when Peter was sentenced under Emperor Nero, he made a final request, not to die as his teacher had, not upright, not honored, but beneath. And so Rome obliged, with characteristic efficiency and theatrical flair. Can death be humble? Or is humility in the eye of the one who chooses it? The wood beneath him is stained dark, though not freshly. Peter does not speak. Why hang a man upside down? Scholars suggest several reasons. Some believe Rome chose this method not for justice, but for symbolism. And yet, in this reversal, something strange occurs. Is this the brilliance of Rome, or its blindness? Did they know that in flipping him, they carved an image that would outlast their own glory? The cross groans in the wind. You imagine what it would feel like to hang like that, to feel the blood rise not in anger, but in inevitability. The inverted cross has carried many meanings since. In medieval texts, it was described as a symbol of humility. But in this moment, it is neither. It is simply a man, suspended between earth and sky, trying to breathe. Nero's Rome, we must remember, was a stage. And Peter's death, it seems, was part of that gallery, a living painting turned downward. The crowd is gone now, the executioners too. Only the wind remains and the slow rhythm of a dying man's breath. You step closer, not to speak, there is nothing to say, but to witness. Peter's eyes, half-lidded, catch the movement. There is no fear there, only distance. You wonder if he sees something you do not, and Rome, in all its towering order, could not prevent that. Beneath this darkening sky, the cross is more than punishment. It is punctuation, and the sentence it ends is not his. Dawn breaks with no celebration. Sky is the color of dry parchment, pale and empty, as if the gods themselves have stepped away from the world. A chill lingers across the hard-packed ground of the Roman military encampment, stitched in rows and rigged with discipline. This is not a battlefield, not today. There is no enemy here, only failure, and the punishment that follows it. You walk along the outer trench, boots dragging through clay, softened by morning frost. The air smells of iron and stale barley, with a distant curl of wood smoke rising from cooking fires that no one will touch until this is over. Inside the camp's heart, soldiers stand in ranks. Faces blank, jaws set, eyes refusing to meet. Ninth from the left. The 10th man beside you trembles barely. You feel it before you see it, the dread in the marrow. The ritual has begun. A centurion strides forward, bronze glinting dully at his belt, a bag of small numbered stones hanging from one hand. The stones clink like bones in a burial urn. Most are blank. One is marked. The man stares. He doesn't speak. He only kneels. You know what they mean? You know what's coming? The others follow. Together, you become Rome's machine of discipline, powered by grief. A man who shared your wine, patched your armor, sang crude songs beside you under the stars. Is loyalty stronger when it is enforced by fear? When a legion fails, flees from battle, disobeys orders, or turns against its own, the penalty is not reserved for the ringleaders. The word decimation comes from decimus, the Latin for 10th. But its logic is deeper than numbers. A commander named Crassus famously used it after a defeat in the Spartacus revolt. He needed to reclaim order. What reclaims order faster than the fear of being the 10th? Scholars suggest that it was a tool of terror wrapped in justice. Punishment that ensured obedience not from above, but from beside. It is distributed like plague, like rumor. 1 in every 10 men will die. This one marks the men who will lose barley for bread, will sleep outside the camp's walls for a month. A second-tier punishment like a shadow cast by the first. Not by sword, but by the hands of their comrades. This is decimation, Rome's darkest solution to cowardice and revolt. There is a field beyond, flat and silent. That is where you will sleep now, cold ground, thin rations, the trust of your commanders broken, if it ever existed. The taste of dirt and dust and something more bitter than words sticks to the roof of your mouth. You endured, you followed orders, you are a soldier again. You stand in the line. The drawing begins. A bowl is passed. Fingers reach in, slow as breath. A soldier pulls it out, white, with a smear of red paint like a bloodied tear. Perhaps you will forget. But tonight, under the weight of silence and expectation, you remember every detail. The crack of bone, the thud of final breath, the way the 10th man looked at you, not with hatred, but with understanding. A bee hovers nearby, aimless and out of place. You watch it, it lands on a leaf, then takes flight again, unbothered by the weight of the day. Your group closes in. What does it mean to kill a brother in arms? You lift your weapon. A club this time. Its blades are forbidden. To clean. Decimation is not about precision. It is about pain. The first strike lands with a sound that will follow you forever. The sound of wood on bone, of regret, of law. It does not take long. It takes too long. The body slumps into dust. No one cheers, no one cries. Historians still study this ritual with a kind of horrified awe. First recorded by Livy in the early Republic, and practiced as late as the 3rd century CE, decimation was rare, but real. Is a soldier's loyalty true if it comes not from honor, but from the haunting knowledge that his friends may one day be his executioners? The centurion steps forward again, now with a different kind of stone. You are one of them. Your hands still ache from the weight of the club. Your breath smells of bile. You leave the line and walk through the low haze of camp smoke, past the wall, past the fire pits, past the tents you once called home. And yet, oddly, Rome praises you. You obeyed. Was that the goal? Not justice, but survival. There is no answer here, only wind. You sit on a fallen log, club resting at your feet. Perhaps tomorrow you will march. Because in Rome, discipline was survival. Survival sometimes was paid for with one life in 10. The wind has settled again. You are no longer at the edge of a battlefield or a river. Instead, you find yourself within the thick stone walls of a Roman holding cell. Square, cold, and painfully still. Your feet rest on uneven stones. Dampness collects along the walls, beating like condensation on truth. You've lost track of the hours, perhaps even the days. But it does not matter. The air here does not move freely. It hangs heavy with the scent of sweat and rust, soaked into every surface like old secrets. The torchlight flickers behind you, drawing long shadows across the floor. They are coming. You know this not by sound, but by feeling. The subtle weight of anticipation, the taut pull in your stomach, the way silence seems to lean forward as if listening to itself. One will press just beneath your chin, the other into the soft flesh at the top of your chest. The device will be strapped to your neck, fixed in place. If you try to lower your head, if you move to speak, if you falter even slightly, the prongs will remind you. 2 guards, faceless in the torchlight. One carries the fork, the other a leather strap. You do not struggle. Resistance would only sharpen the pain. Soon, the iron will arrive. And not chains, not a blade, but something more deliberate and more poetic. If cruelty can be called such a thing, they call it the fork of heretics. A slender metal device with 2 sharpened prongs at either end. You find yourself frozen. Not from force, but from the fear of what will come if you move. They do not pierce deeply. Not at first. This is not designed to kill. It is designed to exhaust. The device ensures your chin remains still, eyes forward, neck rigid, your back throbs. The urge to cry out rises unbidden like a tide, but even that is denied. Sweat rolls down your temple, tickling your cheek, but you cannot wipe it away. Punishment not of the body, but of the will. And so they enter. The device is fastened with expert hands. It is lighter than you expected, deceptively simple. But within moments, its presence becomes unbearable. Heresy was not just theological dissent. It was political instability, a fracture in the empire's divine order. To question the heavens was to challenge the throne. You wonder if yours bears such a phrase, and whether the words are meant for you or for those who pass by. Was it a phrase muttered in debate, a jest made in the wrong company, or did you truly speak against the gods? You clench your teeth, careful not to let the tension shift the fork. Its walls are too thick, its laws too vast. Your body becomes a statue, trembling, imperfect, slowly eroding under invisible winds. Against the emperor, against the way things must be, used during the later empire and early medieval periods, particularly against heretics and those accused of blasphemy, The fork was a favorite of inquisitors and governors alike. Your breath grows shallow, muscles begin to tense. Those you never knew you relied upon to keep your head at rest. Every instinct urges you to move, to lower your gaze, to slump with weariness. But you cannot. You must not. And so, the punishment begins. And in women who knew that words could reshape empires, and that silence, enforced or chosen, was its own kind of exile. This device, strange as it seems, did not originate with Rome, but the empire. In its perfection of spectacle and order, embraced it. It left no open wound, no visible scar. But it drained the body slowly, stripping dignity 1 minute at a time. What makes this suffering so effective is not the pain, but the anticipation of it. Isn't that the nature of control? To convince the prisoner to become their own jailer? A rat scurries along the far wall. You do not look at it. You cannot. Time becomes strange here. Each second stretches like molten metal. Your knees ache, because speech, too, is punished. In this stillness, your mind turns to the past, to the words that brought you here. Sometimes guilt was unnecessary. The accusation alone was enough. Roman law, especially in its later centuries, became deeply intertwined with religious authority. And so, punishments like the fork became popular, tools of silence, not slaughter. You think of others who wore it before you. Scholars, perhaps, poets, midwives accused of whispering strange prayers. In some versions of the device, inscriptions were etched into the iron. I renounce my sin, or I am guilty. Does silence become confession when it is witnessed long enough? Your legs begin to shake, your jaw aches. Outside, the city continues. Rome does not notice your suffering. It never did. And yet you remain, still breathing, still upright, still silent. Perhaps that is the cruelest thing of all, a world built on words, on oration, on law, on command. What happens when your voice is stolen? Not with violence, but with steel. You feel your breath slow again. The ache is not gone, but it is familiar now, like a shadow at midday. You are not yet broken, but you are bending. Rome is always watching to see who will bend first. Afternoon heat settles low and heavy across the city like a sentence yet to be spoken. The sun casts a copper sheen across the rooftops of Rome, making even the white marble blush with sweat. Shadows pool where the alleyways narrow, and in those alleys, whispers bloom. You walk carefully here. Among the murmurs and stares, the hands clutch too tightly around secrets. Something has happened. Or is about to. Beyond the Tiber, a crowd has gathered by the Tarpeian rock. You move toward it slowly, the slope rising beneath your feet. Dust coats your sandals and clings to the hems of your tunic. The air smells of dry stone, fig leaves, and something more acrid. Fear, perhaps, or fate. Or perhaps it sinks into the underworld. Everything depends on the direction of your fall. It was symbolic. A fall not just from the hill, but from honor, from citizenship, from the right to belong. At the top, the view is divine. The Capitoline Hill falls away beneath you, and Rome stretches beyond in elegant defiance. Arches, baths, temples, roads, reaching like veins toward distant provinces. But no one here is admiring the view. Their eyes are fixed on the lone figure standing at the edge. For a second, he looks less like a man and more like a shadow peeled from its host. Hands are bound, shoulders bare, head bowed, senator, perhaps, or a traitor, or both. The crowd shifts, but does not cheer. There is no celebration in treason, only confirmation. Is gravity a god in Rome, or merely its servant? The Tarpeian rock is not high, barely 25 meters, but from here it seems to rise into the heavens. You can barely hear the words, but they taste bitter in the air. Latin has never felt so final. His body is twisted, unnaturally still. Dust rises around him like incense. Not by sword, not by fire, but by being returned to the earth with no ceremony. Or perhaps he merely stood on the wrong side of a rising tide. It smells of crushed rosemary and hot limestone. The sun continues its descent untroubled. A second crow joins the first. In Rome, loyalty was often a matter of timing. Some believe it was rooted in the myth of Tarpeia, The Roman maiden who betrayed the city for gold and was crushed beneath enemy shields. Why did they do that, he asks softly. The father does not answer. And some of those layers must be broken to be enforced. Punishment, after all, is not just to eliminate the guilty. It is to remind the innocent. The rock, named for her, became a place of consequence, of justice that mimics betrayal. The wind will rise again, and someone else will sleep knowing they are too close to the edge. No one speaks loudly. Treason is a word that stains, even in thought. You step down the hill, feeling the rock's warmth beneath your soles. It retains heat well, this place, even as memory cools. Others argue it was simply a convenient drop, a spectacle with natural acoustics. A crow lands nearby, indifferent, tilting its head as if to study the arrangement of bones. In ancient Rome, being thrown from the Tarpeian rock was a punishment reserved for traitors, particularly those guilty of perduellio, high treason against the Republic or its sacred institutions. A priest murmurs a prayer. His voice is steady, practiced, emotionless. The condemned says nothing. His mouth moves once, but no sound escapes. Whether it is regret, protest, or prayer, it will never be known. And then, with no drum roll or flourish, he is led to the edge. There is no push. Not exactly. Just a nudge. A moment of absence, where presence used to be. He falls. His body twists once in the air, more reflex than intention, arms bound and useless. The sound of impact is dull, flesh meeting stone with a thud that echoes briefly and then dies. A breath passes through you, like a shiver on a windless day. What does it mean to belong to a state that kills by height, that elevates justice, literally, before letting it crash back down? You stare down into the hollow where the man now lies. Scholars have debated the origin of this punishment. In either case, the message was clear. Betray Rome, and you fall. You think of the man, of what brought him here. A vote in the Senate, a whispered deal with the wrong consul. The wind stirs now, catching the edge of your cloak. The crowd disperses slowly, like smoke unraveling. You pass a boy on your way down. He clutches his father's hand, staring back at the ledge where a life ended moments ago. Maybe there is no answer that fits within the bounds of language. Maybe the only answer is the echo, still trembling between rock and air. Rome was built on layers, of stone, of story, of rule. Tonight, the rock will cool. The roar reaches you before the gate opens. It rolls through the stone corridors like thunder, sealed in a jar, shaking dust from the ancient archways of the Colosseum. You are beneath the arena now, where sunlight only drips in slivers, and the scent of fear is stronger than air. Chains rattle faintly nearby, not from the condemned, but from the creature who waits. You are not sure if it senses what's coming, or simply remembers. The walls are thick with moisture, the floor covered in straw, darkened by years of blood. The guard beside you says nothing. His face is a weathered map, unreadable, but not unkind. Won't meet your eyes. You don't blame him, a lion. Its breath is deep, like bellows stoking a forge. The fur around its neck is matted with sweat and dirt. That name has already been erased, replaced with a label more suitable for the arena. Criminal, heretic, entertainer. Golden eyes glint with something older than rage. Instinct sharpened by hunger and the hum of the crowd above. You sit on a bench carved into the stone wall, ankles bound, wrists heavy with manacles. By the 1st century CE, it had become a form of capital punishment, both feared and eagerly watched. Executions were no longer carried out in back alleys or cold dungeons. They were staged, curated for an audience of tens of thousands. The Colosseum opens like a stone flower around you, tiers of bodies piled in expectation. Thousands of eyes press down. Some are excited, others bored, a few curious. The gate ahead groans as gears turn, old wood dragging across gravel. A shaft of light opens into the darkness. You squint as your name is called, and the faint perfume of rosemary thrown by someone in the upper rows. Perhaps they think it brings mercy. The crowd grows restless. The crowd grows restless. The lion exhales, long and slow. The lion follows slowly, sniffing the air, disoriented. It hasn't eaten today. It's meant to be hungry. Above, Trumpets flare, brassy and proud. It's not your name, of course, not the one your mother gave you, but which were you really? Or an emperor? Or simply a bureaucrat fulfilling a duty? Rome didn't always distinguish, as if uncertain what role it plays, as if the theater of cruelty suddenly does not interest it, of beasts brushing past with indifference, unmoved by the scent of guilt. In some cases, the condemned were removed, only to be executed more privately, away from the embarrassment of a lion's mercy. The lion approaches, close enough that you feel the heat of its breath against your cheek. It smells of raw meat and time. Damnatio, ad bestias, the condemnation to beasts, was a public sentence reserved for slaves, deserters, prisoners of war, and enemies of the state. You rise. The shackles clink like distant wind chimes. Your legs are weak, your breath shallow. The animal paces now back and forth, torn between instinct and confusion. As you step forward, you feel the heat of the lion's body pass close. A guard pokes the creature forward with a torch, forcing its slow, reluctant steps into the bright open air. Were they participants or props? Did they understand the blood they were summoned to spill? Some believed they were trained to kill, others that hunger alone was relied upon. But many agree the unpredictability of the beasts made the punishment even more thrilling for spectators. The sunlight is blinding. You emerge from the shadows into a sea of sand and cheers. Closer. The distance between life and death narrows to a heartbeat. You wonder which is worse. No claw. Only silence. The kind of silence that feels alive, that breathes in time with the crowd's confusion. The creature snarls, swipes at the air, and veers away. Sand rises in golden plumes around its paws. The arena smells of sun-baked flesh and old wine. You catch the salt of sweat, the temps of blood. There is none. You walk to the center. But beasts, unlike men, do not always follow direction. Sometimes they hesitate. Sometimes they sniff, pause, lie down. You glance toward the imperial box. Drapes hang lazily in the heat. Someone watches from the shadows. A senator, maybe. The lion snorts and begins to circle. A murmur ripples through the audience like wind across dry leaves. Some lean forward. Some already look away. You kneel, not in prayer, but in instinct. Your heart hammers, trying to escape your chest, and then stillness. The lion stops, looks, waits. What happens when the performance falters? When the instrument of execution refuses to play? There were stories you recall of lions sparing the condemned. But mercy isn't what Rome seeks here. Rome needs spectacle. A guard on the far side raises his arm. A whip cracks. The lion growls and lunges. You brace. But it's only a feint. The crowd gasps. Some cheer, some jeer. You are still kneeling. What makes a beast hesitate? Is it doubt? Recognition? Or simply boredom with the theater of man? Scholars have long debated the role of animals in Roman executions. You are no longer a person here. You are a part of the show. The lion turns once more. This time it moves faster. You close your eyes. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. But there is no bite. And then nothing. The lion walks away. The crowd erupts, not with relief, but with frustration. Their entertainment denied. You are dragged from the arena. Not pardoned. Not punished. Just removed. Stored, forgotten. Perhaps another day will come. Perhaps another lion, or another form of death. But for now, you live. And the beast, the unwilling executor, returns to its cage. Night returns to Rome quietly. The stars emerge one by one, patient and deliberate, as if each has been summoned to witness something solemn. The streets are quieter now, footsteps hushed on worn stone, and somewhere in the Suburra, a lyre plays a soft, meandering tune that never quite resolves. The walls are plastered in faded ochre, and a single oil lamp casts trembling shadows along the curve of the ceiling. A breeze sneaks through the shutter, warm with late summer and the faintest trace of laurel. Sit alone in a small chamber, a guest room, though no one here is truly a guest. On the table before you rests a blade, short, clean, polished, and entirely yours. You already know its contents. A formal statement, absolving the state, praising the emperor, affirming your loyalty. You've signed it with steady hand and practiced grace. You've been given wine. a final gift. The cup is half full, its rim damp with citrus and metal. Beside it sits a sealed scroll. Tonight you are to die, but with honor. This is suicide as ritual, orchestrated and expected, a Roman exit wrapped in dignity. You are not a prisoner, you're a senator, a general, man of name and note, fallen from favor, yet offered the mercy of self-inflicted silence. Your stomach curls, not in fear, but in memory. Because this is not a punishment in the traditional sense. According to Tacitus, Seneca opened his veins calmly, then inhaled poison, then entered a warm bath to speed the process. His death, layered and deliberate, became a performance of philosophical resolve. You skim the lines: loyalty, service, devotion, a narrative preserved. The blade glints gently in the lamplight. Its edge waits without judgment. You take a sip of wine, sweet with honey and heavy with resin. A bead of red appears, delicate as a pomegranate seed. The pain is sharp but brief. It reminds you you're still here, still whole. You wonder who will wash it tomorrow. A few hours later, a messenger appeared at your door, not with chains, but with permission. By allowing a disgraced nobleman to take his own life, Rome maintained the illusion of order, while silencing dissent and avoiding public spectacle. Surprisingly light, its hilt is smooth with use, a senator's blade, not a soldier's, designed for clarity, not combat. You recall the verdict? Delivered not in fury but in disappointment. The emperor did not shout, he only raised a brow. You were not to be executed. You were to execute yourself. And in doing so, preserve your family's estate, your name, your legacy. Is that mercy, or merely the illusion of control? You feel the pulse in your wrist, steady and human. In the early empire, particularly under emperors like Nero, forced suicide became a political tool, elegant and deadly. Blood slips into the basin with a sound like whispered rain. The way she lit the lamps at dusk, humming old songs in a voice just above silence. Only the story that will be told in its place. Seneca, the famed Stoic philosopher, was one such case. Once tutor to Nero, later ordered to die by his own hand. Is death noble when staged? Is dignity real when it is required? Did men like Seneca, Thrasea, or Petronius choose death? Or were they choosing the lesser of two losses? Life without legacy, or death with dignity? You reach for the scroll, unfurl it. The ink is still wet from the scribe's final flourish. But because you are no longer here to see it, to refuse the blade would be to shame one's bloodline. To obey it was to vanish gracefully. You wonder if your name will be remembered in anger, or simply as another footnote in Rome's unceasing scroll. Not for you, it's for those who remain. The blade is cool in your hand. You draw it across your forearm lightly, testing. The room shifts and it's quiet. You rise slowly and kneel beside the low basin. It's carved from dark stone, etched with vines and myth. Another sip of wine. It coats your throat like syrup. And then you begin. The blade bites deeper now. Not a gash, but a slow unraveling. You do not cry out. That is part of the ritual. Roman men do not die screaming. Your breath comes shallower. The lamp flickers. Time distorts. The walls breathe. Outside, the wind rises faintly, carrying with it the scent of smoke and olive groves. Scholars today argue whether these suicides were truly voluntary. Perhaps both. In Rome, the self was not owned entirely by the self. It belonged to the Senate, to the gods, to the ancestors. Your knees weaken, the basin fills, your fingers tremble around the hilt, no longer firm. You think of your wife, her quiet strength. You think of your son, young, stubborn, and full of questions. You pray he will never understand this night. The blood smells like iron and fire. It stains the stone, weaves along the floor, and then at last your body begins to lean. The blade clatters from your grip, a final offering. And the lamp, once steady, begins to dim, not from oil or air. Morning arrives without warmth. The sun ascends slowly above Rome, but its light is pale, filtered through a veil of high clouds. It glints coldly on rooftops and temples, and the wind carries a scent both sweet and sour. The familiar perfume of fig blossoms twisted with something more acrid. Beneath it, the city stirs, but cautiously. You walk through a narrow alley now. One few enter by choice. In the late Empire, variations of this punishment emerged for slaves and criminals accused of theft, desertion, or blasphemy. The condemned would be made to straddle the sharp edge of the wooden donkey, naked or partially clothed, sometimes with weights tied to their ankles to intensify the pressure. The walls are close, and the stones beneath your feet are slick with spilled water and something darker. A wooden cart sits to the side, piled with iron tools that clink as you pass. Not weapons, but implements. A bucket of sand rests nearby, ready to be scooped into leather pouches, the weights that would drag a body downward. Slice by slow degree, yet never kill outright. It is designed for humiliation, for slow wearing agony that leaves the soul raw long after the flesh is healed. Sandbags are fastened at his ankles, slowly, with ceremony. Designed not to kill, but to press the body into shapes of pain. Their silence is not solemn, just routine. For them, this is work, an assignment. Not from the guards, but from the law of pressure. Gravity is indifferent. At the end of the alley, a small courtyard opens like a reluctant mouth. There is a platform in the center, plain and wooden. You can see where the wood presses into him, carving invisible lines into the soft flesh of his inner thighs. Blood doesn't flow here, not yet. The threat of it hovers. A few whisper behind raised hands. See a mother cover her son's eyes. Though the child peeks through curious fingers, rope hangs from either side. His knees buckle at the sight of the device. His breath stutters. The scar across his ribs lifts as he inhales. That's what makes it cruel. It wounds slowly and visibly. You wonder how many have sat there, and how many watched. You see it in his face. Not fear alone, but shame, hot and deep, like something burning beneath the skin. The guards lift him down roughly. He cannot walk. He is carried. A bit of straw lifts from the platform and tumbles toward you. The city resumes its motion. It catches on your sandal before drifting away. It stripped the condemned of dignity, forced them to perform their pain in front of others. Pain, in this context, was not just consequence. It was education. Another man waits to be led forward, more commonly associated with later European torture practices. Many agree that Rome used similar devices, sometimes for sexual humiliation, sometimes for bodily torment. Records from the later imperial period mention wooden punishments inflicted upon soldiers, slaves, and women accused of violating public modesty laws. The piece of cloth is thrown over him, but it hides nothing. And there, set at a slight angle like a beast turned to stone, stands the instrument. A carved wooden form, tapered at the top like the back of a mule. They call it the Spanish donkey, though in Rome it bore a different name. Less exotic, more descriptive. You approach it now. The wood is polished from use, its edge darkened where flesh met cruelty. Two guards stand nearby. One yawns. The other taps a whip idly against his thigh. Neither speaks. But for the man brought forward now, bound and bare, this is not routine. The punishment is not designed for execution. The man is hoisted, not quickly, deliberately. He is placed atop the narrow ridge. His legs hang on either side like dead weight. You hear the first gasp. It is small, almost polite, but the body cannot lie. His arms tremble. His lips go pale. Then it begins. The true punishment. A minute passes, then two. The crowd that has gathered, a mix of citizens and slaves, vendors and children, watches with strange stillness. Some smirk, others turn away. What does it teach? This public display? Does it restore order? Or simply shift pain from the courtroom to the street? The man's back arches now. His jaw clenches. He lasts longer than most. 10 minutes. Maybe more. But time here isn't measured in moments. It's measured in surrender. Eventually, he collapses forward, eyes wide, mouth open but silent. The donkey remains, patient, polished, ready. Scholars have long debated the origins of this punishment. But more than a tool of justice, the device was a symbol. You look again at the wooden form. Its edge is sharp, yes, but not sharp enough to cut immediately. The true punishment, the pain itself, or the eyes that witness it. The wind stirs. You turn to leave. The alley feels narrower now. And somewhere, behind a closed door, twilight leans heavily over the city, drawing long shadows across Rome's crumbling arches and cracked courtyards. The light has changed, no longer golden, but rusted, like old copper weathering beneath centuries of breath. The streets have thinned now, and the air carries the earthy scent of burning olive oil, singed linen, and iron heated beyond memory. You walk along the outer edge of the Forum, toward a structure that was once part of the public baths, but has long since been repurposed. Tonight, it is not a place for cleansing. Tonight, it is a place for branding. His back is slick with sweat. His chest rises and falls, not with panic, but with the steadiness of someone who has resigned himself to the coming pain. The fire glows red and steady, flickering without song. Against one wall lies a small iron rack, and upon it, a set of tongs, their curved ends glowing with restrained violence. A man who has served years in the household of a minor official, long enough to earn comfort. Small privileges, the illusion of permanence, but something has changed. Perhaps he fled, or spoke too boldly. Red hot, it sizzles faintly as it's held in the brazier's heart for a moment longer. You can smell it from here. The tang of scorched metal, the anticipation of burned flesh. When the iron is pressed to his forehead, a moment that stretches endlessly, the hiss is sharp and intimate, like a secret exchanged in pain. Simply looked the wrong man in the eye for too long. The mark is made, and the iron is returned to the fire to await the next. It was a permanent scar, not just on the skin, but on the soul. To brand someone was to mark them forever as property, to announce to the world that they had dared to forget their station. The room you enter is windowless, lit only by braziers sunk into pits in the floor. Rome's economy ran on slavery, and order required that bodies be accounted for. By the 1st century BCE, runaway slaves were so common that signage appeared in markets advertising rewards for their return. Some masters even preemptively branded their servants to deter flight. In the center stands a man bare to the waist, his hands tied loosely in front of him. A slave, not recently captured, not newly brought. The punishment is not death. It is identification. In ancient Rome, slaves who tried to escape could be branded on the forehead with the letters FUG, short for fugitivus, meaning runaway. He may rise to household steward, tutor, cook. He may save a child's life or manage estates, but the first thing anyone sees will be the scar. The branding iron is lifted now. The branded man does not cry out. He stands as ordered, eyes closed, mouth firm. The scent is immediate, burnt skin, hair singed away in a flash, sweat turned to steam. The room fills with it, heavy and cloying. Outside, the night feels cooler than it should. A breeze rises, lifting your hair slightly. Somewhere someone is singing, low, wordless, and far away. And yet he remains upright. His legs tremble, but he does not fall. What does it mean to reduce a human life to a single syllable carved in heat? Is a name still a name when it is given in pain? The branded man is led away. A rag is pressed to his wound. He walks stiffly but without protest. Somewhere, a master waits to reclaim him. You stay behind, watching the iron cool slightly before it's rotated back into the coals. Scholars have noted that branding was more than punishment. It was policy. It wasn't just cruelty. It was bureaucracy. And yet, cruelty wrapped in procedure is still cruelty. The man will carry that brand until death. It may heal, may fade slightly, but it will never vanish. Rome believed in order. Nothing enforces order more clearly than a body marked into silence. The brazier pops suddenly, a spark leaping into the dark like a startled bird. You step back instinctively. Heat clings to your cheeks. You wonder what it would feel like to be marked that way, not by law, but by assumption, not for fleeing, but for existing. Does a burn fade in memory, as it does on skin? Or does the soul carry the pain in perfect clarity? You leave the chamber slowly, but the smell of fire remains in your nostrils. And beneath your feet, the stones seem warmer than before. Night in Rome has teeth. It's not sharp ones, not the kind that bite in haste, but blunt and deliberate, like molars grinding down the day until it disappears into silence. You walk beneath the arches of a quiet portico, the shadows broken only by oil lamps flickering along the colonnades. A stray cat crosses your path, its paws soundless on the stone, tail curled like a question mark. You follow a corridor that descends beneath the basilica. Not a temple this time, but a chamber of justice. Here, the empire's laws are etched not just into marble, but into memory, into body. At the end of the hallway, 2 guards stand beside a low wooden door. They do not speak. They nod once, and you are allowed through. Inside, the air is close, thick with candle wax, damp straw, and the metallic scent of old breath. A small table stands at the center, upon it a cloth and 3 instruments. None of them are large. One resembles pincers, another a scalpel with a blade no wider than a reed, and next to the table sits a man. His eyes are wet. Not with fear, not yet, but with tension, the kind that gathers like fog behind the eyes when there are no more words to offer. One guard holds his jaw open, another prepares the blade, rare but recorded. A sentence used not to end life, but to erase voice. And then, a wet, sudden noise, thick and final, to leave a man standing but speechless, present but powerless. His mouth is gagged with cloth, stained dark at the corners where he's bitten down. The man doesn't scream or beg. He simply meets your gaze, not with hatred, not even with sadness, but with a kind of resigned clarity, the look of someone who understands exactly what is about to be taken from him. He has spoken something Rome did not wish to hear. The punishment is precise. Others believe it was carried out selectively, used when execution might martyr the condemned. He's seated again, upright, breathing slowly. His face is pale, but his eyes still move, still flick from corner to corner, observing, measuring, silencing preserved power without creating a grave to rally around. In rhetoric, in oration, to speak was to lead, to persuade was to rule. The courts were arenas of speech, Senate a cathedral of voice. A great orator could shape the destiny of cities. A poet exiled for verses that questioned imperial virtue. A slave accused of inciting others to disobedience. A former magistrate who whispered too loudly of rebellion. In certain cases, especially for slaves, poets, or political enemies, Rome enacted glossectomy, the removal of the tongue, as a method of silencing dissent. The scribe offers him a wax tablet and stylus. You watch as the cloth is removed, and perhaps what he will become once it's gone. You step out into it, the cold, pressing gently against your cheeks. A torch flickers behind you, its flame shivering in the draft. The procedure begins without flourish. The man is laid back, his wrists bound loosely, not to restrain, but to guide. No sedative, no anesthetic, only ritual. New laws will be spoken aloud. But somewhere in the crowd, this man will remain. Silent, marked, listening. The room fills with sound, shallow breathing, muffled protest, the gentle scrape of metal against teeth. The tongue is lifted from the mouth, red and slick, and dropped into a bowl of salted water. The man convulses once, then stills. Blood floods his throat. A rag is pressed against his lips. He is sat upright so he won't choke. You can taste the iron of it in the air, sharp and dense, like rusted coins left in the mouth. His eyes flutter shut. And in that moment, the room is full of noise, not of voices, but of meanings unspoken. What does it mean to silence a man, but leave him living? Is this mercy, or something colder? Historians have found accounts of such punishments in scattered records, usually among the annals of the persecuted or the condemned. Scholars argue about the rarity of this sentence. Some say it was symbolic, more myth than practice. You look at the man now. His mouth, though, is still. A hollow where language once lived. In Rome, so much power lived in the tongue. To remove the tongue, then, was not just mutilation. It was erasure of identity. Damned! The man attempts to speak, but no sound comes, only breath and blood. He reaches toward the table, his fingers trembling. He writes a single word. You lean in. The scratches are uneven but readable. Still, you do not know what he means. Still alive, still defiant, still watching, still human. The ambiguity lingers, like incense caught in the folds of your cloak. Outside, the wind moves again. It brushes across the arches with a sigh. The city continues. Courts will open again tomorrow. The Senate will meet. And perhaps in his silence, there will grow a kind of power greater than speech. The sky above Rome is bruised tonight, Clouds drift low and purple, swollen with rain they refuse to release. The wind rises softly at first, then with purpose, slipping through alleyways, brushing through olive groves, coiling around columns with the whisper of something old and unrepentant. You are far from the city center now, where polished marble gives way to open land and low wooden structures. A gallows stands here, though no one hangs from it. This place serves another purpose. Not a cart's wheel, not anymore. This one lies horizontal, propped on a frame of rough timber. Its spokes stretch outward like ribs. Beneath it a pile of broken branches waits, dry and ready. He is thin, sunburnt, and motionless, but his eyes dart with life. Not panic exactly, not resistance, just presence. It carries the scent of pine smoke and damp leather, mingled with something fainter, crushed rosemary, spilled wine, and blood not yet spilled but already promised, the way a person watches when every moment might be their last. Though more commonly associated with later medieval Europe, its roots may be found in earlier Roman practices of execution by dismemberment or prolonged exposure. It was designed not for speed but spectacle. Pain stretched over time, visibility sharpened by design. Tonight, it is the wheel. It rests in the middle of a cleared square of dirt, large, round, iron-bound. A deliberate rhythm like a grim musician finding a broken tune. Not because it doesn't move you, but because it must be seen. Someone must witness this. And beside it, bound and waiting, lies a man. His limbs are splayed, roped tightly at the wrists and ankles. The man is then lifted carefully, awkwardly, and laid across the wheel, his ruined limbs threaded between the spokes like a tangle of vines. His mouth opens in a silent scream, shoulders straining against the ropes. The wind shifts. The breaking wheel, or crux rotata, was a punishment used across parts of the Roman Empire, particularly in the provinces. Not to burn the man alive, but to warm the air, to draw attention, to create smoke that rises like incense from an altar of agony. Others argue it evolved naturally from earlier forms of crucifixion and exposure, refined into a device meant to delay death and extend the message. They do not wear masks. Rome never needed to hide its instruments of order. The body became a language, a spectacle, a scroll of pain to be read by anyone watching. A feathered edge wrapped around steel. The wheel itself is not the executioner. It is the stage. Perhaps mercifully, someone will twist the wheel hard enough to finish it, but not yet. To lictors step forward now, each carrying a heavy rod, other spectacles, other lessons. The fire crackles, a dry snapping like twigs breaking underfoot. The man's breath is slower now. The wheel creaks beneath him. The sentence is read aloud, in Latin of course, but no one truly listens, not even the condemned. It is a formality, to remind the crowd that he is still there, still part of this world, still breaking. Dust swirls. Something his pain cannot reach. The path is uneven, the stones loose beneath your feet.
Ow.
But the night is strangely soft now. The wind continues, moving past you, around you, through you, carrying with it the scent of ash and pine and something else. The first blow lands on the man's left leg, a sickening crack. Bone shatters, but the skin does not split. The second blow lands higher, the thigh. Another crack, then the right leg. The arms follow. You watch, you do not flinch. Each strike is methodical, calculated to avoid immediate death. The goal is to maim, not to kill. He does not move now. His breath comes in short bursts. The wind tugs at his hair. A drop of rain lands on his forehead. What kind of justice requires so much ceremony? What truth does Rome hope to teach by grinding it into broken limbs and public gasps? Scholars disagree about the origins of the wheel in Roman law. Some suggest it was imported from provincial customs. Gaul, perhaps, or Thrace. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who betray, rebel, steal from the state, or challenge divine order. And yet, the more complicated truth may be this. Rome didn't just kill bodies. It curated consequences. The fire beneath the wheel is lit now, slowly. His eyes are still open, but no longer looking outward. You wonder what he sees now inside himself. Perhaps a childhood meal, a mother's voice, the warmth of sun on water. Something quiet, the wind presses harder. The wheel turns. Not quickly, just enough to shift the weight. Eventually, he will die. Not from the blows, but from internal bleeding, exposure, or shock. Not yet. The crowd begins to leave. Rome rarely lingers at one form of death too long. There are other punishments. You remain a moment longer. And above it all, the wind sings. Not loudly, but with purpose. Is it possible that the wind itself mourns? Or is it merely passing through? Indifferent as always, you turn to leave. The memory of motion. The fire has already begun. It flickers low in a shallow bronze bowl, nestled within a marble altar at the edge of a private courtyard. Above, the stars are dimmed by thin smoke curling toward the sky in slow, elegant spirals, like incense rising from a sacred wound. Their wings, faded by centuries of steps, seem trapped in midair, a frozen escape. He holds a scroll in one hand, a pinch of ash in the other. Behind him a figure kneels, a young woman trembling, draped in white. Around you, shadows stretch long beneath torchlight. Laurel branches rustle gently overhead. But one of the quietest and strangest was the ritual ingestion of ashes or burned offerings, particularly among suspected enemies of the state or Christians during periods of persecution. By swallowing a portion of a burned sacrifice, one was symbolically consuming loyalty, affirming unity with the state and its divine order. The smell is thick, both sacred and sour, as if divinity and decay now share the same breath. You stand barefoot on the tiled floor, the cool ceramic squares painted with birds in flight. A priest approaches, robes dark and shimmering like water under moonlight. She has been silent until now, but her eyes speak, defiant, searching, already beyond apology. Or to choke on it. In Rome's imperial cult, loyalty to the emperor could be tested in many ways. A pinch of ash, still warm, is placed upon her tongue. The bowl crackles softly behind them, offering more. But for those who refused or faked the ritual, punishment followed swiftly. The girl is lifted gently by two attendants and led out of the courtyard, not condemned, not spared. The girl opens her mouth. The priest steps forward and tilts her chin gently with two fingers. Others argue that during periods of heightened tension, particularly under emperors like Domitian or Decius, these acts became both test and trap. She closes her lips, and then she begins to cough. The ash dries her throat instantly. Her body revolts against it, a slow, rasping sound emerging from her chest. The ashes cool into soft gray mounds, like the bones of time itself. Her hands clutch the air. Clay cup is brought forward, filled with sour wine, and she sips. But the ash is stubborn. It sticks to the back of the throat like betrayal. You can smell it now. Not just smoke, but burnt flesh, bitter herbs, and bone dust. It lingers in the nostrils, mingling with the metallic edge of fear. The ritual is complete. She is swallowed. But has she submitted? That question hovers in the air like cinders. There is no announcement, no decree, just a glance exchanged between two officials and a subtle nod. A single oil lamp flickers from a windowsill above, its glow curved like a sleeping eye. Ash is quiet, but it speaks. Scholars have debated the accuracy and frequency of this practice. Some believe the ritual consumption of sacrificial remains was symbolic, not enforced. To eat what Rome burned was to internalize its rule. But what happens when your body rejects the symbol? Is that treason or simply digestion? You remain in the courtyard a moment longer. The fire has dimmed. A breeze lifts a pinch of it, carries it briefly, then lets it fall. One speck lands on your lower lip. You taste it without meaning to. Bitter, earthy, final. It's not pain that lingers, but dryness. A silencing that does not wound, but waits. The ceremony disperses. The priest extinguishes the flame with a careful hand. The torchlight shifts, and still the ash remains. In the bowl, in the air, in your lungs. Was this justice or theater? Sacrifice or a swallowing of silence? Perhaps the answer is in the breath you now take. Shallow, uncertain, tinged with dust not your own. Perhaps Rome's deepest power was not in its armies or its laws, but in the things it made you consume and then forget. You walk back toward the city's heart. The streets are empty now, and in your throat, the phantom taste of fire still stirs.